What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego back with another edition of Shit I Don't Care About. Coming in at number 5 is the fight with Shane Mosley and Anthony Mundane. In 2010, Mundane was KO'd by a fighter named Garth Wood, a fighter with only 11 pro fights. Really don't give a shit about this fight. I'm not much of a fan of all-time greats, living legends, facing off against guys who we know in their prime they would have demolished. Not a fan of this. Shane Mosley, I honestly didn't watch the fight with Pablo Cesar Cano. However, it went the distance, and I don't think he did enough to prove that he's back and he can climb to the top of the division. So, not really looking forward to this fight and really don't give a shit about it. Coming in at number 4, Roy Jones Jr. facing Bobby Gunn in December. Bobby Gunn, you ask? In the words of Biggie Smalls, who the fuck is this? And no, this is not going to be televised because no one's going to pick it up. None of the networks are going to pay top dollar to fight Roy Jones Jr. and match him with Bobby Gunn. Bobby Gunn is a journeyman, and again, I'm not a fan of all-time greats fighting journeymen this late in their career. It's one thing if you do it to build up your name, but once you've built up your name, it should be better competition, stiffer competition. Roy Jones Jr. was and still is one of my favorite fighters. I just think he's further tarnishing his legacy by having these fights that don't make sense. His last fight was controversial. It was a split decision, I believe, in which he won. A lot of people feel a type of way about that fight. And again, I like Roy Jones Jr. I think he should stick to commentary, training fighters. I believe he did some work with Jean Pascal and other fighters. So I think he should get more on the business side of boxing at this stage of his career, because I hate to see a guy get knocked out by people I know he would trample over. In at number 3, the next episode of Jim Lampleys' The Fight Game. Now, this is a show with an agenda. Based on the promotional Cold War with Top Rank and Go To Boy, and now the networks, HBO and Showtime, they've joined in on that battle. So it's really an all-out war. The fans and the viewers aren't going to get a fair shake. This show seems to be extremely biased. Just like any level of media, there's always a possibility of a form of bias. But in this sense, with Jim Lampley's show, it's flagrant. Like, it's very obvious who he favors. He'll go out of his way to badmouth the fighter who's no longer affiliated with HBO, Floyd Mayweather or Adrian Broner or anybody, Canelo. He'll always downplay them because they're no longer with the network. And I don't think it has to be that way. Now, if you're with Network A, I'm not saying that you should endorse or fully sell or go out of your way, but the truth is the truth. If you're a boxing commentator, you got to give everyone a fair shake. That's just like a trainer who trains fighter A, let's say Manny Pacquiao. So we'll use Freddie Roach. Say Freddie Roach is training Manny Pacquiao, and this is before Miguel Cotto went over and started training with Freddie Roach. Freddie Roach would be a fool to say that Miguel Cotto is not a good fighter or badmouth him. He could say, I think my fighter is going to beat him, but he doesn't have to totally shit on Miguel Cotto and make it appear as if he's not a good fighter or he's not stiff competition because he doesn't train him. So same thing with Jim Lampley. Just because these fighters are no longer on the network, it's really not even your deal. It's not your issue. It's more or less the promotional companies. You don't work for Top Rank. You work for HBO. But at the same time, that doesn't give you the right to give the viewers a skewed approach in terms of just because they're no longer on the network, you're not going to give them any level of praise or anything, and you're going to make it like they're not fighting good fighters or whatever. In at number 2, Wan Ma Lopez. He's possibly going to be training with Pedro Diaz, and he's going to be fighting in general, and I really don't give a shit about this. Wan Ma Lopez, he's given us great fights. He's a warrior. However, I think his time is over. His time has passed. The Orlando Salido fights proved that they took a lot from him. They took a lot out of the tank and out of his career. He's a semi-young fighter, but he physically is an old fighter. He's been through wars. He's been through war, like back-to-back wars, and that's not good for a fighter because A lot of these guys start off from a young age, and then when they get in the pro career with top level competition, sometimes they go through these wars and get battered and beat up, and it just slows them down in the reflexes. I think this really showed in the fight with Mikey Garcia. Not taking anything away from Mikey Garcia, he did what he had to do. He came in a little bit overweight. However, I think Mikey Garcia would have won anyway, but it didn't even look like he had to really struggle to figure out Wan Ma Lopez. Wan Ma's footwork looked horrible. It looked very horrendous and very sloppy. He looked punch drunk. It looked like his balance and his equilibrium and his ability to take a punch, everything looked like it was severely diminished. And that's not good. So a fighter who already had kind of a questionable chin against bigger punchers, it's just going to go downhill from that. It's like the snowball effect. When you were younger, sometimes you could take the punishment. Sometimes you can endure more. Sometimes you have more agility. But the older you get and the more wars you go through, it's just almost inevitable that it's going to be hard for him to rise back to the top. And look at the guys like Orlando Salido looked good in his last fight against Orlando Cruz. So I don't see Juan Ma Lopez coming back to beat a guy that he hasn't beat two other times. And even with the knockdowns in the Mikey Garcia fight, to me, Orlando Salido had held a better account of himself. He got knocked down a lot, but the second half of the fight, it looked like he tried to turn it up. He weathered the storm. He didn't get knocked out, whereas Mikey Garcia versus Wan Ma Lopez was getting rocked and he got stopped. So Orlando Salido looks like he still can be a tough customer, a challenge. He can still do things. I really don't see at this point Wan Ma Lopez avenging two losses to the same guy, especially when in recent fights Orlando Salido looks pretty consistent. The Mikey Garcia fight, he didn't look terrible. It looked like he was just getting outmatched by Mikey Garcia's wits. And then obviously in Orlando Cruz, he stopped his opponent. So don't see Wan Ma Lopez making this miraculous Rocky comeback. And I really don't give a shit about him continuing to fight. I wish him and his family the best, but not really looking forward to that. Even with a Pedro Diaz, I mean, there's only so much a trainer can do at the end of the day. When the bell rings, it's just the fighters in the ring, not the trainers. And topping off my list, in at number 1, Antonio Tarver fighting again. Now, he's moving up to heavyweight. He was suspended last year after the Latif Coyote fight. He tested positive for steroids, performance-enhancing drugs, and he was suspended. That suspension is up. It's boxing. Now he's taking on a new challenge, moving up in weight to fight at heavyweight. Who is his opponent? Is it Deontay Wilder? Is it a Klitschko? Nope. He's going to be facing Mike Shepard. Mike Shepard is 38 years old. He has won 6 of his last 9 bouts. However, only 2 of those opponents had winning records. So that really doesn't mean much to me. Someone could have 50 wins, but if the competition wasn't there, if they weren't elite level guys or top competitors, top 10 at least, it really doesn't mean much. That's what they call a padded record. So even though he won 6 out of 9, that doesn't say much given his competition. And again, this is a 38-year-old. This is not someone that's even losing in the division. Even like a David Price, someone who's a younger heavyweight, would be more of a challenge. So I'm not anxious to see Tarver come back, period. Especially after the Latif Coyote performance, the way they were talking shit before the fight, and then I actually watched the fight, and it was one of the most boring fights of 2012 that I remember watching. I just remember being thoroughly bored. I watched it with my pops, and we were both like, oh my gosh. We were just extremely bored with it. So I'm not anxious just based on how he looked in his last fight. He looked slow, and that was with steroids. How do you look sluggish and lethargic with steroids? Like, why'd you even take them? Like, I thought the point of that's like me taking steroids and going to the gym and I lift less. Like, I could only lift 10-pound dumbbells. Like, that doesn't even fucking make sense. How do you take steroids and still look horrible? So at least you're going to do steroids, which I don't condone. But if you're going to do them, at least get ripped up and look like you have some level of fucking energy. But anyway, aside from his last performance, he didn't look good in that. Now he's moving up in weight. He's an older fighter. I believe he's 45 years old. I think he should stick to getting residuals from the Rocky movie and call it a career. I don't know if Showtime wants him back as a commentator. I don't know. I don't know what his business mind is like. But I'm not really anxious to see him fight at heavyweight, especially against a Mike Shepard. If he is going to fight at heavyweight, at least fight somebody whose name is relevant. Even a fucking Seth Mitchell. Seth Mitchell doesn't look like he could take a punch. He doesn't look like he's just invincible. He fought Chris Arreola and got knocked out in the first round. Even fighting someone like that off a loss, I think would do more, and you will make more of an impact and a statement fighting someone who just lost than fighting a Mike Shepard who virtually no one knows about, is not making any noise in the heavyweight division. So if you're not willing to jump into the deep waters of a heavyweight and fight a big puncher like a Klitschko or Deontay Wilder, okay, that's one thing. But shit, fight a David Price or a Seth Mitchell or somebody who's off of a loss to see where you're really at. Because again, a win over Mike Shepard, I'm not going to bring out the foghorns and the parade like, oh, Antonio Tarver's back. He's the next person in the heavyweight division. So we'll see. So that's just the ego list of shit I don't care about in boxing as it pertains to boxing. Let me know if there's anything that I missed, anything that you guys don't give a shit about. That's really all I gotta say. Leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think. As always, hate, comment, or subscribe. Till next video, it's Ego signing off.